Hello everyone, I'm Dave Pike, otherwise known as Connector Geek. In our second podcast talking about smart agriculture, I'm joined today by two gents from Molex. We have Roger Kaufman and Darren Schauer here to talk about some of the challenges of incorporating technology into the agricultural environment. Roger, Darren, good to meet you.
Yes, thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
We talked about last time, we talked about the smart farm, the new revolution that's happening in agriculture, and the way that new technology is helping farmers to increase their yield, to develop solutions to feed the population. The population of the world is growing, is going to be approaching 10 billion by the middle of this century, and that's going to need an awful lot more food. So we talked about how technology is helping farmers develop these solutions for feeding the world. And we touched upon how that technology is being used actually in the field, because that's one of the challenges. So it's always important to remember that the agricultural sector has often been at the forefront of adopting new technologies. But here we're faced with the challenge of some really high-tech electronics that all of a sudden is going to be placed into what is a pretty harsh environment. So that's the sort of things that we're going to talk about today. And so I'll open up with the first question to both Roger and Darren is, what is this new technology that's powering the smart farm?
Well, David, there's a multitude of different devices in today's tractors and combines, such as telematics and GPS, the use of multiple cameras throughout and around the machinery itself. RF plays a big role with all of this, with the sensors and all of the different connectors that Molex manufactures. It does take quite an effort throughout the entire Molex team to complete all of the modules that are included on today's equipment. Anything to add to that, Roger?
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that 5G is kind of the glue that brings it all together. You've got to tie this data together. You've got to get it to the farmer's devices or equipment. Even vehicle-to-vehicle communications is important. If a tractor breaks down, you've got to pass on some of the mapping data and the other telematics information.
There's a lot of new technology. Well, in a way, it's new. It's not necessarily new to consumers. You mentioned 5G. We've all been aware of the 5G revolution with smartphones and new connected devices. But all of a sudden, we're taking this very sophisticated electronics and we're putting it into this harsh agricultural environment. Rain, wind, high temperatures, low temperatures. We're leaving equipment out in the field potentially for months. It's being used on vehicles. So how do you design products that are capable of delivering all this wonderful technology into that harsh agricultural environment? Darren?
A lot of our products are IP rated, and IP stands for ingress protection. So that's a rating system that determines how much solids and liquids could or could not get into the interface of a connector. We take this into consideration with our products, especially in the AG market, because they are in the harsh environments that you just mentioned. In addition to the environmentals, there are caustic chemicals that are used as well. So we do need to protect the interface from all of these elements.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that sealed connectors or IP-rated connectors have been around for quite some time. We provide a lot of these similar types of products into radio devices used by the armed forces, for example. So if they drop their radio into the ocean or into a pond or a lake or a river or a stream, there is no ingress of moisture into the interface. The same types of technologies are used in the agriculture environment. I mean, just imagine a farmer at the end of the day using a high pressure power washer to clean his equipment. The connectors are certainly going to be exposed.
That's interesting, actually, to think that there are aspects of design for the agricultural industry that have things in common with other almost completely diametrically opposed environments. The military environment, I imagine there might even be some crossovers with things like the automotive industry. I take it that kind of expertise is powering the products that you develop for agriculture.
Very true. Not only does a standard RF interface become IP rated once it's mated, we have to customize these connectors to be IP rated somewhat when they're unmated. Because of the dirty environment that a farmer might be in at the moment, even when they're unmated, there needs to be some sort of IP protection.
Yeah, that's true of many connectors, isn't it? A lot of connectors are supplied with an IP rating, but it's always important to remember that's generally only when they're mated together. An unmated connector is an almost an open hole that allows ingress. So that's a real interesting aspect. I just want to circle back to the comment that you made, Roger, about the caustic environment, about some of these chemicals that are being used. I expect that means that you've got to think very carefully about materials choice, how things are being put together.
Yes, materials are critical. And if you think about the typical standard sealed connector, especially in a mated interface, usually there's some sort of a rubber gasket or O-ring. What people don't realize is those rubber materials tend to be like magnets for dust and lint and other things, which could break down your IP protection. Molex has some very unique ways of sealing connectors where we minimize the use of rubber O-rings and gaskets, something that we've learned through the years in dealing with other IP-rated connector environments, either for automotive or military and so on.
That's really interesting. And actually, then that kind of brings us on to the question about how this technology is being integrated into new vehicles. The dream, I imagine, for anybody, whether it's an industrial user or a farmer, is that they would like the latest piece of equipment, which is fitted with as much technology as possible that's going to help them do their job. So Molex, I take it, has a big history in developing solutions for this kind of new equipment. Would that be right?
That is correct, David. We work with ag tech companies around the globe to help them make their new products, which can then be incorporated into some of their older vehicles.
And that's a really interesting point as well, because for every farmer or for every industrial user, if we take it beyond the smart farm, for every user that has the ability to be able to buy a new tractor, a new combine, a new piece of kit, there are plenty of other users who are trying to make use of this new technology whilst using their existing farm machinery. Does that integrating into existing equipment present other challenges that brand new users might not have?
Yes, David. Incorporating some of the newest technology and some of the older equipment out there on the farm can be a challenge. If you think about it, some of the older technologies, you might not have, enough battery power in the tractor itself. So you need to have portable devices that are aftermarket type kits with their own power source.
That's interesting. And I imagine that also applies to some of the newer disruptive companies out there. We talk about the agricultural industry, and there are big names that we're all probably very familiar with. But there are newer companies out there, aren't there, who are developing new and interesting ways. They might not even be agricultural companies at their heart, but they're developing solutions for farmers. I imagine they have the same kind of challenges.
Absolutely. The remote controlled drones that the farmers are starting to deploy and use as part of their smart farm strategy was not generated or created or invented for the farmer. It was invented for the novice, for the child in us all that want to fly a drone.
Yes, and so we've got a combination of almost of consumer electronics with harsh environment industrial type electronics that's got to be used by a non-expert in this tough environment. So the question, I guess, then comes down to, how does Molex approach creating solutions for these challenges? Roger, does that chime well with your experience?
So, David, I think, with our years of experience in a variety of industries, as well as in the whole agriculture equipment type space, we've learned a lot. We've seen all the different potential applications, situations, the challenges for the connectivity, and we've used the Molex resources and engineers to create very novel approaches and designs to make all this equipment work together.
And so would that be, are we talking about custom solutions, or is it about developing versions of existing tried and trusted solutions?
Many times it's tried and trusted. One of the things that we have found in the agriculture equipment market is they're using some of the automotive technologies that have been developed over the last 10 to 15 years, keyed and color-coded connectors for different applications or different types of equipment within the tractor or implements.
That's great. Darren, did you have any other thoughts along those lines?
I'd like to add that our bread and butter ours is in custom solutions. We have many products off the shelf that would generally work for many applications, but it is our bread and butter and our pride to make custom solutions depending on the application.
That's really interesting, because we've got that combination of standard off-the-shelf products with a proven track record, which I'm guessing is one of the reasons why Molex is trusted by so many people in this environment. So we've got that combination of the standard stuff, and then the ability to look beyond simply just the connector, because that's one of the things we want to talk about, isn't it? That Molex isn't just creating a connector anymore. We're talking about an integrated solution.
That's correct. We're actually making cable assemblies and harnesses, in some cases in bundles, wrapped in corrugated tubing with other protective devices built into them. Because again, as you said in the intro, this is a very, very harsh environment. Different types of temperature extremes, weather extremes, including rain, snow, ice, leaving the equipment out for days at a time. So it involves a lot of creativity in coming up with the complete solution.
And so to create that solution, to provide that kind of support, how does Molex go about supporting these OEM customers? They might not just be OEM customers. We might be talking about tier 2 or tier 3 customers who are creating solutions for the agricultural industry. How does Molex go about supporting them with their designs?
Through product management support and engineering support, we work very closely with our customers. Through Zoom, through Teams, we are able to video conference and work very closely with our customers to find out exactly what their application is. We need to know all the specifics of the application. Is it GPS? Is it video? All the different nuances, what frequency they're working at, etc. Once we find this out, all the information needed, then we can come up with a solution that works best for their application, or maybe we get lucky and find something that's off the shelf that's going to work for their application.
Roger, do you have anything else that you can add for us?
David, I think it's also important to know that unlike some manufacturers, we don't ask these companies, these OEMs, for very large minimum order quantities. So they can come to us and they can order products 10, 15, 20 at a time to try them out and test them out in the real world application before they commit to production orders in the future.
I imagine then that Molex's global reach has a large part to play in providing those solutions.
Definitely. RF alone has a global reach, and Molex as a company as a whole has an even deeper global reach.
Talking about how customers come and deal with Molex, is it the case that the customer has the answers already to all of these important questions, or do you guys have to work with them to almost find out what the questions are before you can deliver the answer?
We still need to ask the questions. There's new applications and new ideas from our customers each and every day, and so we need to know to ask the right questions and get to the root of what's actually going to solve the problem or be a solution for them. Anything to add to that, Roger?
I think it's very important to understand we use a more of a consultative type approach. We engage with the customer, we try and understand their pain points and their problems, rely on some of our past experience, rely more so on their experience, outlining for us the environments, the application, the frequencies, as Darren mentioned earlier, and then try and come up with some ideas that address those specific needs.
That's interesting. When I look at the Molex website, and very much talking about the idea of creating connections for life, the idea of creating a solution that it's not just about providing a connector, it is about providing a system that is actually helping people deal with day-to-day problems and with their particular applications. So the expertise that Molex brings, partnered with the customer, is what's bringing that solution to life. Isn't that right?
Yes, and really that's the fun part of the job, is thinking outside the box and creating the solution for the customer rather than just throwing an off-the-shelf connector in their lap and saying, I hope this works. Working with the customer and being part of that team for the solution is the fun part.
Yes, and I want to just add to that I think it's really critical to realize that we believe by doing the types of things that we do, we become that preferred valued partner, the first person that customer calls when they have their next challenge.
That's important, isn't it? It's always about being in the forefront of people's mind when they want to find a solution, to be that person that they turn to. So whether it's phoning Molex as a corporation with a huge amount of experience and track record, or whether that's dealing with Darren, with whom you've got a great relationship and you know who's going to be able to find the answers. Both approaches are really important to customers nowadays, aren't they?
It is, and that's a big reason why we've had a lot of success in the AG market, because of our being attentive to the customer and being able to get back to them quickly.
I'm really getting a feel that Molex's approach to providing solutions for the ag tech industry, and not just ag tech, but industry as a whole, but we'll be talking about RF solutions here that have applications across so many different parts of the industry at the moment. Molex has a real winning combination of both a massive global reach with a distribution channel, with expertise around the world, and then this combination of individual experts, very much like yourselves, with the experience. I was touched before we started the interview. You said both of you live in that environment. You only have to travel half a mile down the road, and you are surrounded by fields of crops that these people are trying to grow. I think there's a value for customers knowing that you understand the problems they're up against. I take it that you feel that that's very much a part of what you can offer.
David, for me, it's the next lot over, actually. So I can see the field being planted and reaped from my kitchen window. So we see it every day, and it really brings it home for us.
That's an interesting point, because it does bring the whole globe together, doesn't it? You guys are in the Midwest of the US. You've got those huge fields full of crops. I live here in the UK. We've got lots of dairy farm. We've got lots of hill farming. The individual farmers face different challenges every day, but the solutions that they find to improve their yield, to improve their productivity, are common around the world, aren't they? The experiences that they have are a universal problem.
As you mentioned, the world population is growing at such a rate, and farmers need to use every square inch of land that they have. And I've seen in the example of the field that's next door, they're right up to the tree line. There's only about a foot of distance between the tree line and the stalk of corn. So they're using every square inch available to them. And I would imagine that's the same across the world. What do you think about that, Roger?
Technology is allowing these farmers to become more efficient, to produce more with what they already have, and this trend will continue.
I think that's probably a brilliant place to bring this to a conclusion. I think it says so much about how Molex are creating solutions. Again, going back to what's on the website, about creating connections for life, about creating connections, solutions and relationships that help people day to day, whether it's the farmer growing his crops or industries elsewhere. I think it says an awful lot about Molex's approach, that so many OEM manufacturers are trusting you guys to develop these solutions that will help feed the world in 30 years' time, that will help provide solutions to these challenges. I just want to say a huge thank you to Roger and Darren for spending this time having a chat with me. As I say, I'm one side of the pond, you guys are the other side of the pond. We experience agriculture somewhat differently, just because of what we see in our drives to work, in driving around with our family. But the challenges are global. This problem will grow as the population grows, and it's important that we develop solutions for farmers to be able to make the most of the land, to make the most of the resources they have, and to help feed the world for the future. Thank you so much, Darren. Thank you so much, Roger, for your time. It's been brilliant talking to you. I hope everyone has found this as interesting as I have, and I look forward to speaking to you all again. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, David.
David, thank you very much.